Welcome to this latest episode from the National Leadiology Association podcast. We're going to continue a conversation we've had with my partner in crime and brother, Tanner Thorpe. I am your host, Dr. Amin Sanaia, leadiologist, author, speaker, and coach. And Tanner, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Tanner Thorpe. By day, I am a chief culinary officer, and by every other part of my time on this planet, I am a thought leader, a culture warrior, a motivational speaker, a lover of people, and very passionate about how we lead and how we grow and how we follow.
Awesome. We will be bringing you thought-provoking, academic-based conversations on leadership topics in a academic manner. So we're going to put all the academic side to a practicality sense, and this is what these episodes are going to be about. This is part 3 of our conversation on navigating 5 leadership challenges. Just to recap, the 5 challenges leaders face constantly are inspiring and motivating your team, navigating uncertainty and ambiguity, addressing conflict and managing difficult relationships, making tough decisions and taking bold action, nurturing a culture of innovation and continuous improvement. Today, we will be focusing on addressing conflict and managing difficult relationships. Now, this is a topic that, we can speak on hours on this topic, but let's start off this way. So we know that conflict within a team can be constructive or destructive, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I mention the words constructive conflict, what I'm looking at is that dynamic process where divergent ideas and perspectives are harnessed to achieve positive outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
That includes fostering growth and innovation. So, Tanner, in your experience, when you look at constructive conflict, what do you think about those words?
So when we talk about constructive conflict, I think the very first thing is it's all about culture, right? So you need to have a culture that has safe space, right? Where you can have those conversations, where you can say, look, I disagree with you in the most positive of ways. I disagree with you because I want this to be a constructive process. I disagree with you because my idea may not be the best idea. Your idea may not be the best idea. But when we come together and we're collaborative in that way, then we can really get to the good stuff. Then it's not just brown nosing or being passive or passive aggressive. It's really how do we bring our collective talents to the table in the most positive way, right? And my talents are different than your talents, Dr. Amin.
Sure.
And in my professional career, it's been mostly a culinary background. Kitchens can be high intense situations, right?
Yes.
Things have to happen in a certain matter of times. There's a lot of ego that drives decisions in kitchens. And it's no different than the healthcare field, right? If a nurse and a doctor are in the same space and the doctor's making a decision that's wrong, right? Or may not be the best decision. Okay. And that nurse doesn't feel like they have the ability to conflict with that doctor or have their voice be heard with that doctor. It can have detrimental outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to have that safe space and that safe culture where it says, you know what, I want you to challenge me. I want you to challenge what I'm bringing to the table. Right? I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the most talented cook in the kitchen. Right? I want to be surrounded by people that are more talented than I am, that are going to challenge me, that are not just going to say yes, chef, and let me screw up a dish, or let a doctor screw up a surgery or procedure. That's where constructive conflict is so important.
Absolutely. So leaders play a vital role in channeling those disagreements, obviously in a respectful manner, but we need to channel those disagreements into opportunities, opportunities to grow, opportunities to build better relationships. I know you mentioned culture at the beginning, and it truly had organizations have to have that culture of openness and having those safe places where it is allowed to have those conversations. So it really truly is about establishing those clear norms for respectful communications between different parties, whether it's between co-workers or between a co-worker and a leader. They can have those conversations where hold on a second, let me push you back a little. Hold on a second, have you thought about it in this sense?
Yeah.
And usually those conversations lead to a better result than otherwise when it's just one person driving, one person making the decisions. You only have that one perspective, and that person only has limited experience. No matter how vast or how many years of experience they have, they only have that one experience. So it is so crucial to have those safe places to allow other people to chime in and say their piece, so that the best outcome really happens in that. One of the things that comes to mind when you were speaking was the emotional intelligence piece behind conflict resolution, and how that having that skill set really can help drive those situations to get a better outcome. What are your thoughts on that?
So, as we're having this conversation, I think back to the most toxic workplaces that I've worked in, right? And the most toxic workplaces that I've worked in were very top-down environments, right? And you couldn't challenge what was going on. Now, I think there's the other end of the spectrum too, in that where a work environment is so open that everybody just gets to challenge all the time, right? And then no progress gets made.
Yes.
So I think that's where the leader role comes in the most effectively, right? Am I going to foster good communication between the members of my team where they feel like they can challenge one another? But am I also going to have the environment where I, as a leader, am going to say, okay, we've challenged enough. It's time to make a decision, right? And bring that conflict all together of what is the direction that we're heading.
That is great. I mean, you said it so eloquently there. It's having that balance. So as a leader, being vulnerable and allowing conflict resolution, disagreements, and eventually into agreements when there are topics that should be discussed, but then being able to reel that in so that eventually you get to some kind of resolution, or you agree to disagree, but there has to be steps moving forward, because you just can't get paralyzed because you don't agree. Where in an organization you're going to have a lot of that disagreements, and people at times are just never going to agree on certain things. But as the leader, you do have to make that decision. I think when you were talking that our conversation, when I mentioned the emotional intelligence piece, reminded you of toxic workplaces, I automatically came to mind some of these leaders that really have a hard time in, number one, allowing hard conversations to happen where there are going to be disagreements, but also in playing it where they want to turn a blind eye that, okay, well, we don't have to discuss that, where, and that's where my mind went to. So for me, I remember at a very early age in my professional career, uh, the best lessons I learned were through leaders that didn't have that skill set, that they did things that they probably shouldn't have, but also that they led in the wrong way. And I wouldn't even call them leaders, I'll call them managers. Because they just didn't have the emotional intelligence or emotional maturity to lead people.
No, you hit on something. You hit on something really great there. There's a difference between a leader and a manager, right? A manager manages processes. They manage situations, but they're not the one that people rally behind, right? Leaders are the ones that take you from one place to another, right? They're not just managing a process, they're not just managing a system. So, yes, you have to have that emotional intelligence. You also have to understand who the key players on your team are, right? If you have a bunch of people that think in the same way, and that's what's making up your think tank and your collective team, you're probably not going to have those conflicts, right? You're probably not going to get that good growth. You're not going to get that what you're looking for. You have to have people that have different skill sets and dynamic backgrounds that are coming to the table, because that's where you're going to really get to the best process that you possibly can. And again, it's the responsibility of a leader to recognize the strengths and weaknesses of their team, right? Weaknesses aren't necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It's not. Strengths are only as good as what your gaps are, right? I need those around me that are better at my gaps than I am to help me grow in those areas, right? And sometimes I'm going to sit in a place of my ego or my arrogance or my pride, and and that conflict is going to frustrate me until I dig down deep and I go, okay, why is that conflict frustrating me? It's frustrating me because I'm recognizing something in myself that I probably need to grow in. And when you bring that to a constructive place of leadership and problem solving, it takes you exponentially further than if you're just at a table of yes men, or you have a weak leader that doesn't, or a weak manager that doesn't understand the emotional intelligence of the people around the table, doesn't understand the strengths and weaknesses, and just lets things kind of go, and then you never get anywhere productive.
Yeah. In our conversation, so we're talking, about the emotional intelligence piece, but I think where we're getting at is, does the leader have enough self-awareness, right, to understand their own emotion and biases and allow those conversations to happen? So in our work together, I always remember, I try to keep in mind of where my emotional intelligence or where my mindfulness is, because there are times where I do fall into that trap of not having the not having that self-awareness. But I mean, as quickly as I realize it, then reel it back in. So it is not something that's easy. It is something that you have to have practice and be intentional about, where if you're struggling, like you mentioned, if there's a situation that keeps bothering me as a leader, stop. Have the self-awareness to reflect on it and see, what is it that is bothering me about this situation, so that I can really take the right steps to move forward. And I think that's a piece as leaders that we can do better at. The other piece that leaders can do better with, as far as emotional intelligence, you go from self-awareness to active listening.
Mm-hmm.
That is a crucial component. And this whole, when you're looking at challenges that leaders face today, if we're able as leaders to really comprehend the underlying emotions when you have these conflicts, you can now serve your team better. What are your thoughts on that?
So there's a lot there, you know. I mean, what's that saying about active listening? Most people don't listen to hear, they listen to respond.
Yes.
Right. And most people are already halfway through what you're saying. They've tuned out. You know, they're then trying to figure out how they can make their point. I think, you know, as a good leader, yeah, active listening is incredibly important. It's that spatial awareness, right? Are you aware of what's happening around you? Are you hearing the things that aren't being said? Also, you know, how well do you know your team to know that when someone acts a certain way, that you know what they're thinking, right? You know whether they're engaged in it, or you know whether they've disengaged.
Yes.
You know, and again, it goes back to some people. It takes their entire career, and they still never get it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some people pick it up really quick, but it's about truly knowing what you want and what you expect out of yourself and out of your team. You know, and you know, there's conflict management, there's conflict resolution, and oftentimes I find with active listening, repeating the question back, repeating the statements back, is a very healthy way to gauge what's being said. Right. So if somebody says to you, in a meeting, you know, I think that this needs to happen this way. I think that, you know, our productivity is down, and the only way that we get more productive is if we do it this way. Right. It's easy to just step back and go like, well, I don't agree with you. Right. It's much harder to be present in that conversation and say, so if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that you think we can be more productive by following this process. Right. And then that gives them an opportunity to clarify or confirm.
Absolutely.
And that helps especially when you have tense, constructive conflict driven conversations. You know, I mean, in our work together that we've dealt with a lot of conflict together. Right.
Yes.
We've done with a ton of it. We've done with a ton of it in our internal organizations. We've done a ton of it with external organizations.
Yes.
Right. You and I have been very successful, I would say, at being able to manage some really tough conflict situations and turn them into very constructive processes and solutions. But the only way we've been able to do that is by truly listening, by truly seeking to understand what we're hearing. You know,
I love that what you just said there at the end. You know, by truly seeking to understand, that is a concept that, especially nowadays in our society where everything is so divisive, is, you know, I'm on my side, you're on your side, so, you know, let's not find common ground. Let's allow our thought process, our minds, to welcome new ideas, different points of view, so that we can truly understand. How can you have a better perspective if you don't allow someone else ideas or points of view to be listened to? You can't,
yeah,
because you only have your perspective, right? So, you know, how do you truly get to that better place? It's by understanding, you know, really understanding that point of view. So one of the things that came to mind is in managing difficult relationships, and you brought that, and that just went right into a thought. What strategies can leaders employ to foster and open communication and build trust. I know that's a lot right there, but I mean, we've
No,
done we've done a lot
I've
of work in this so far, so I think we can point out a few.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, we've spent a lot of time now talking about constructive conflict, right?
Yes.
And we haven't talked about kind of the interpersonal dynamic conflict. And I think I learned early on that there's three sides to every story, right? There's
Yes.
their side, the other side, and what really happened, right?
Sure.
And so often in my early days of being a manager, when long before I would consider myself to have been a leader, I would take one side, and then I'd take the other side, and then I'd try to deduce in my own, Sherlock Holmes mindset of what was really going on there. And there was a point in time, gosh, I must have been in my early 20s, where I recognized the only way I was really going to get to what was going on was to get both parties in the room together, right? You can come to me and you can tell me your complaint, and you can come to me and you can tell me your complaint. But what we're really going to do is we're going to sit down together and you two are going to work it out, right? Then from there, you also have to understand what is driving the conflict nature behind someone, right? Is it truly that they want to bring ideas to the table and they want a resolution and a solution to what's going on? Or are there outside interferences that they're dealing with that then makes them combative? And I think there's a difference between conflict and combat, right? Some people just come in, they're just guns blazing, they're just ready to fight, right? And they have something else that's really bothering them. And you'll be able to tell that really quick. Like, you can tell if someone's solution driven when you get into the conversations with them. And you can tell when somebody's got something else going on outside, right? And I mean, you and I have dealt with enough of that where once you recognize whether they're in one camp or the other, that's where you can really get down to the good stuff of what's going on, or the crucial stuff of what does that person need. And what I mean by that is, if somebody comes in and they're solutions driven, they may be, stuck in their camp, right? They may be stuck in their side and they don't want to bend on it. But the more you talk with the, both parties involved, or all the parties involved, the more you see, them kind of giving up ground and them saying, okay, you know what, I'm seeing this other perspective. I'm seeing that perspective. We can work through this. I can see that happening. If somebody's coming in combative, they're just shut down, right? There's no give. There's no gaining ground or losing ground. And you need to extract that person from the situation. You need to pull that party, because it doesn't have to be just a single person. It can be a side, right? Sometimes you have to pull that side out and say, look, there's something else going on here, and we need to discuss that separately before we go back to the table and try and find a resolution or a solution to what we're working on.
Yeah, it's absolutely what you're saying, all of it. It's just clearing up those, and opening those lines of communication. That's the first step. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And it's true. Most people, when you open up those lines of communication and you kind of push them along to let's talk, you usually can find some common grounds. Now, if that person is going to be combative and no matter what, they're not willing to listen, then that's a whole different set of circumstances where that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
It's just not. One of the things that I like from what you're saying is the point of transparency. So being transparent as a leader, it really takes your relationships with your teams to a whole different level. Because if someone brings something to you, like you mentioned, someone brings a problem to you, if you're not transparent that, no, hold on a second, I'm not just going to hold on to this information. We're going to deal with this now. We're going to deal with this. Then you lose that respect level, that relationship with your teams, when you're not able to say, wait a second, I hear what you're saying. How about I hear everyone's stories and we come together and discuss it so that we can find the common ground. So that transparency is so vital to be able to deal with these difficult situations. Um, in cases of deep-rooted conflicts, leaders have to consider, what type of mediation of conflict they're going to use. One of the things that we can do better as well as leaders is how do we equip our teams to be able to do that? Do
Mm-hmm.
we provide conflict resolution training individually as a whole? I mean, those are some of the things that we can do, and we should do. I take that back. We should do for our teams so that they can better manage those relationships without having it to escalate every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that talk about investing in your people and,
Yeah.
upskilling them to a point where now they're taking care of some of the situations before it arises ultimately to the leader level.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I worked for an organization years ago, and one of the key trainings that they did for their leaders was crucial conversations.
Yeah.
And I mean the benefit from taking especially entry level leaders through just the course of crucial conversations. This is a way to deliver criticism in a positive way. This is a way to have conflict management and conflict resolution. This is a way to give constructive feedback. I mean, it's so necessary for leaders to understand, one, how to talk to people, and two, how to navigate conflict.
Yep. So as we wrap up here, I want to say a few parting words, and then I'll turn it over to you, Tanner. So ultimately, by consistently demonstrating authenticity, which we talk about all the time, empathy, and a commitment to fairness, we as leaders can foster that environment where difficult relationships transform into collaborative partnerships. So we as leaders do have that final say of what it's going to look like in the workplace by turning something bad into something good.
Yeah, absolutely. When we use the word conflict, it just has such a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
Right? When you think of conflict, you think of fighting. And conflict doesn't have to be that.
No.
Conflict can be one of the healthiest things that an organization can have, as long as it's led well, as long as it's
Yes.
managed well. And to what we've just been talking about over the past 5-10 minutes or so, the more you bring your team together in times of conflict, the more they learn to trust you as a leader. They know that you're going to be honest, you're going to be fair. I love that you said empathy and compassion. It's integrity. They
Yes.
know that, right, I'm going to go to Dr. Amin, and I know that he's not just going to take my word for it. He's going to take all of the facts from everybody involved, and he's going to make a wise decision. My uncle is a big fan of a preacher by the name of Andy Stanley, and he says that whenever making a decision, here's something Andy Stanley says. It's basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says, in light of my present circumstances and what I've learned from the past, what is the wise thing to do?
Wow.
And that's how you navigate interpersonal dynamics. That's how you navigate conflict that happens around a meeting table when you're trying to make forward progress for your company or for your team. You use the historical perspective of what you've learned over time. You use the voices at the table, and you use your present circumstances to make wise decisions. And conflict ultimately, when used constructively, leads to wise outcomes.
I love that. Great words there to finish us off, Tanner. So for our audience, tune in. This was part 3. Part 4 will be upcoming, and it's gonna promise to be fun because it's one of the things that I'm really good at, making tough decisions and taking bold action.